Rare Disease Day 2014. For Rare Disease Day today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like to live with a rare disease, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people talking about the technical side of various disorders, but to really understand what it's like to have a rare disorder or a rare disease, usually you actually have to think about what it's like to live with one. I have a rare disorder called a Mast Cell Activation Disorder. Basically, with a mast cell activation disorder, I have what amounts to an allergic reaction to all sorts of things that are not actually allergens. And one of these is the smell of coffee. When you first hear someone say, "Oh, I can have an allergic reaction to a smell," the first response is often, "No, you can't. That can't really be a thing." Maybe you have a reaction to something that's in the air, but it's not really a smell, because nobody can have an allergic reaction to a smell. Well, you'd be wrong, sort of. A person with a mast cell activation disorder can have their mast cells degranulate to any physical, environmental, or emotional stressor, anything that makes your body have to react to, basically. And that actually includes the chemicals that make up odor. And when a mast cell degranulates, it dumps its contents into your body, and that's what makes you have an allergic reaction. Anything from a stuffy nose to the really scary stuff like going into anaphylaxis. And for me, one of the smells that sets off my mast cells personally is coffee. So to be honest, coffee is not the only thing I react to. Like I said, it can be any kind of stressor. And I'm just going to walk you through a typical day of mine to let you see what it is like to have this disorder. If you've never read the spoon theory, that definitely applies to people who have MCAD. Now, before I start, I should say my reactions to this disorder are what they call the leaker kind of reaction. I know it sounds like a diaper or something, doesn't it? People who are shockers have something trigger their mast cells, and they almost always go into anaphylactic shock. People like me who are leakers have mast cells that don't dump everything all at once. They slowly leak it out after they're triggered. As a result, when I get a trigger, I just have to be careful to get away from it as fast as I can, and it'll slowly build up in reaction over the next few hours, and every time I trigger, it'll add a little more. So it can still lead to anaphylaxis, but I have a little better chance of avoiding it because I have more warning, so I can stay away from the triggers or take the antihistamines that may give it a little more time to prevent that from happening than someone who goes into shock so quickly. So, typical day for me. So the first thing that happens is I'm startled awake by an alarm, the cats, the kids, and it turns out for me, being startled is a stressor that makes my mast cells degranulate, so I have an allergic reaction. In the morning, it's usually a very quick blinding headache. You start having pain run down your shoulders and your arms, your bones hurt, your muscles ache, you might have brain fog and confusion, and at that point, I usually wish I could just go back to bed. The next thing I do, if at all possible, is nothing. I lie in bed for the next hour or two, waiting for the allergic reaction to pass. I have my computer next to my bed. I usually have a drink of water or a book so that I can do this. And the reason I do this is because the moment I get up, I'm going to have another allergic reaction. This is because the body releases histamines when you stand up to get your blood pumping a little more, so your blood doesn't pool in your feet when you stand. And for a person like myself with a mast cell disorder, what that actually ends up doing is pushing my histamine level over the edge and causing another allergic reaction. It's very difficult to deal with two close in a row, which is why I wait a little for the first one to pass. The next thing I do is go make some food. I have a fairly limited diet, and I have to make everything from scratch, so it usually takes 30 to 90 minutes to make a meal at least. And along the way, I'll usually have a few allergic reactions because two of my triggers are to heat and cold. So if I take something out of the refrigerator or the freezer and I touch it against my bare skin, if heat from the stove or the oven hits me in the face, if the water is too cold or hot and happens to touch me, those will make me have an allergic reaction, including if it's anything I eat. So I have to let things get to room temperature more often now. But I'm still getting used to this, and so I screw up kind of a lot and have a mild allergic reaction. My triggers to heat and cold in small doses like this are not as severe, and so having a few like this just makes you feel pretty crummy, but it's not going to dangerous levels. You just feel like you have the big headache and the brain fog and everything hurts, and you have to kind of not plan any big plans for about an hour or two after you've eaten your food. For the rest of a typical day, I homeschool my 2 children, and I try to do the active homeschooling on the moments I feel well, because if there's any stress, an emotional stress can trigger another allergic reaction. It typically does. So I may have to have periods during the day where I can't really move, and our homeschooling has to be done with the children able to move around, but me not so much. I try to get out to my garden to take care of it just a little bit, but the heat and cold outside the house also trigger me, but more so than cooking because it hits me around the whole body. So if I go outside the garden, I have to be prepared to need at least 30 minutes to a couple hours to get over that. And then we try and go teach again and garden again and teach again at little periods during the day, trying to keep the reactions as minimal as I can, basically. So by the end of the day, or sometimes before it's even early afternoon, I'm pretty much done. With all the reactions that build up, I usually feel like I have a horrible, horrible case of the flu by the time I'm done for the day. Everything hurts, everything can be itching over your whole body, your head is congested, you have horrible headaches, you just want to lie down and sleep for the next 2 days. And usually that's what you end up doing, is falling asleep. If you're not so lucky, the reactions can get worse and you start having problems breathing, your throat starts feeling all swollen, and for a person like myself with mast cells that leak, that's a sign you are done. Doesn't matter what time of the day that hits, that's all you get to do that day. Because however much you might want to push through and do things, even if that thing is just doing dishes, you can't. Because with a mast cell activation disorder, even movement utilizes your mast cells and can actually set off a reaction, just moving around, walking. So you're done. You go sit down, you sit on your butt. I cannot tell you how sick of sitting on my butt I am and how often I have to do it. It's just, but you know, that's what you're stuck with. Aside from the reality of dealing with daily frequent allergic reactions, there's also the day-to-day practicalities that are just kind of weird and challenging to adjust to. For example, because I trigger to heat and cold, anything hot or cold, I have to find workarounds, like taking a hot shower, or walking on a tile floor in the wintertime when it's cold, or trying to open a Ziploc bag of frozen food without letting it touch your skin. Those are things you have to just figure out how to do. On top of that, I also react to quite a few chemicals and scents, so I cannot use shampoo in my hair. I cannot use toothpaste on my teeth, and I've had to find alternative methods of getting both of these clean. These are the types of things that people with rare disorders often have to cope with. Weird, bizarre things that make everyday activities a whole new challenge. So all these day-to-day challenges and all these reactions that I've discussed so far happen in the safest place I have, my home. When I have to leave my home, I have much worse triggers that I encounter that I have already eliminated from my house. And that makes going outside of my house to other places a really big challenge. If I go out, it is not a case of if I will trigger, it is a case of when I will trigger, how often I will trigger, and how badly. The best I can hope for is to control some of these and pay attention so that when I know it's starting to get bad, I can still drive myself home and make it home before I completely collapse. One of the difficulties for me personally is the medications that can help alleviate some of these symptoms. I have allergic reactions to all of them too, so currently I do not have much in the way of medication to help me through this. The other difficulty with this is meeting other people because I react to the things other people have on them, their clothes, the scents they wear, and that means I can meet people sometimes for even an hour or two, but it has to be in an area that is open, that I can get away from the scent or step away from them or be upwind from them, and that presents challenges of its own. On top of that, it is very difficult for people to understand why you have to suddenly leave all the time, why you can't see them very often all the time, because by the time I get sick, I have already gone home, and they don't really see me looking like, well, looking like this. This is what my skin looks like if I've been wearing a pair of pants and sitting in the sun for about 20 minutes. Again, this is not really something I care to show people. Not very pretty, but because most people don't see this side of things, sometimes they have a hard time believing it's real. I mean, come on. Reacting to the sunlight or to the smell of coffee? That just seems really strange, like it couldn't possibly happen. And this is something that happens to a lot of people with rare disorders. There are such strange reactions that people have a hard time believing they could actually happen. And when people don't believe your situation is real, that can leave you very, very isolated because the people around you view any of your difficulties as a mental problem instead of the actual physical condition it is. Sadly, this can happen from family and friends and sometimes from the medical community too. And like I said, it can leave you with not only your pain and suffering, but a huge feeling of isolation as well. I'm very grateful that isolation is the thing I find the hardest about this disorder. For many people, the constant anaphylaxis is the biggest problem. I don't have that. For many other people with this, the constant pain is the biggest difficulty. And my pain levels I can usually keep low enough that for most of the day I am at least somewhat functional and my mind can think okay. And sometimes on really good days I might have a whole day that, you know, is pretty good. But again, this video was done for Rare Disease Awareness Day. And it's mostly to help you see that, one, there's some weird rare disorders and diseases out there, really. If you meet someone and they tell you that something is physically happening, please, if your first impulse is to say, that couldn't happen, go explore it before you say it to the person, because I can tell you as someone who's had people say that to me, who has had people tell me I need psychological help because there's no way this could really be happening. That's a horrible, horrible thing to say to someone, especially when you don't actually know what is going on in their body and what they're going through. But I also hope it might help to understand that just because someone looks fine, perfectly fine, doesn't mean that everything's fine in their bodies. And so I hope that this helps raise a little bit of awareness. And for all the people I know on all my mast cell support groups and everything, hi, I hope you all have a really good day and just eat some wonderful food. I hope you react to almost nothing today and it's just an amazing weekend. Everybody have a lovely, lovely day.